I think I speak for everybody who's been logging into these conversations over the last few weeks when I say that it's really a joy to learn about people who, you know, you've seen many, many times and maybe even sat across from them at the ONIG table. But until you kind of dig in and ask them about their life and have them tell you the stories, there's a lot of things that you wouldn't know and that are kind of surprising and revealing and illuminating and kind of inspiring. I'm really getting a kick out of all of this. And I really got a lot of a similar kick out of talking to Linda Kacser, who is our honoree today. And thank you, Linda, for submitting to this interrogation and also for really honoring us to tell your story, which again is, I think, inspiring and heartwarming and a little bit of surprising. And I'm going to save the surprise a little bit for those of you who aren't aware of her. So Linda, hello, I see you. You're over here on my screen. Just why don't you say hello so we get make sure your sound is right and everything.
Okay.
Oh,
great echo going.
I think we need Claude to mute. Okay, we're good. Thanks. Well, I want to start out just by asking you a little bit about where you grew up and how you grew up and some of your days before college. You're from the Philadelphia area, and tell us a little bit about, you know, that growing up. Tell us a little bit about your parents and your family, if you can.
Okay, I want to give a little family history.
Yeah.
Because I don't have Jewish ancestors except for Sarah and Abraham, but our earliest knowledge was, I always have to read this, from 1768 in Staten Island at the Moravian church there. Nathaniel Johnson married Sarah Mercereau. That's where the Johnsons started. We don't know where Mercereau came from, but 3 generations later, 2 generations later, I think it was, my grandfather, well, they were Tories during the American Revolution, and they were supposedly our ancestor was on the last boat that got out and went to Canada, to New Brunswick, and they were given a plot, and they became farmers. And 2 generations later, my great-grandfather broke out of that pattern, came back to America, went to Harvard University, and became a doctor. So that's the Johnson side. My mother was a Powell, and that was Welsh, and I have some letters of correspondence with them. So that's my background. My father went to MIT, and he was a metallurgical engineer, but he was an inventor, had many, many patents, and very curious guy. He was my idol. I worshiped my dad, and I always wanted to make him proud of me. My mother is from Philadelphia. Mother and dad met during the Depression. My father was in New York, being a traveling salesman around New York City, and the company went broke. They gave him an old Ford. It was a company car, and that was his, like, okay, go out into the world. You're not employed here anymore. And he went to Philadelphia, and that's where he met my mom. So that's the Philadelphia background. I had 2 brothers, one 18 months younger than me and one 5 years younger than me. I was very close to my brother Stephen, close to me in age. And unfortunately, he died when he was 30. And my other brother had some emotional problems, which I sort of separated from my family because my mother had a really difficult time knowing how to handle him, and it was kind of chaotic, and so I kind of became very independent.
You need to get to your life.
My brother Stephen and I both went to Friends Central School. I was in 2nd grade, and he was in 1st grade. I don't know why, because it was like 15 miles away to downtown. We lived in a suburb of Philadelphia called Havertown.
You're talking to us.
And so Friends Central, only in retrospect, I feel was a great influence on me in my life. and being a pacifist and being an activist. And um, I don't know. I just see that as an antecedent where I went eventually.
Yeah, so just to be clear, that was a Quaker school.
It was a
Uh,
Quaker school. Did I not
yeah.
say that?
No.
And there were probably, well, you said it was a friend's school. Can
Yeah.
you, just one little technical note, Linda, we're only seeing the bottom of your face is being cut off. If you can just tilt
Down.
there you go, perfect, perfect, perfect. Okay.
Uh,
So that was a Quaker school, and you also grew up, you told me, a reluctant Episcopalian. What is a reluctant Episcopalian?
but my mom pushed me to go to church every week, and I hated it because it was a local church, and my school community was miles away and in a different environment, and I just was uncomfortable with the whole thing, and she made us go. My father, who was not interested in any religion, he thought that was the root of all evil, that's the root of many wars, so he would never go. So, so I was forced to go to church.
But you told me that the Quaker school, and this is going to fast forward a little bit. We don't have to get into this too, some of your later life, but the Quaker school kind of set a foundation for you that you felt connected you later on to Judaism. Can you talk about that?
Absolutely. Um, they had a friend service committee, so we were very involved in serving or
Look up at.
knowing that was part of our
Oh, okay.
education. I think I mentioned to you that all our teachers were very unique. My English teacher, Mr. Burrows, knitted all the time he was teaching. My Latin teacher was an elderly, she looked like something out of the Roman setting with a wig, with white hair, and she was passionate about Caesar and Virgil. I mean, they were all, my French teacher, Madame Malico, was from Canada, so she had a French Canadian accent. Our teachers were really individualistic, and our classes were really small. And we also played a lot of sports. We had 2 hours after school every day. Everybody had play sports.
But
And I loved it.
what do you think about that connected you to Judaism? Or you realized this later on, of course.
I think being active in the world and being aware of the disadvantaged, being very into social justice, and then the Quaker meetings, which now I value. In those days, we didn't value them, but just the silence and reflection, no theology.
Mhm.
But they wanted to educate people to change the world. I think that was one of their mottos.
So you, I don't want to move too quickly, but I want to cover as much ground as we can in the time we have. But so you ended up going to Cornell University, and you said to me that you felt that, at least in retrospect, you realized that you were sort of at a hinge moment. And I think actually Jane Handler mentioned something about this. She has similar experience, that you were at this hinge moment for women that you referred to yourself as a co-ed, which is interesting. It's maybe kind of a new term at the time, and that you so many women around you went to college to meet a partner, to get married, and others were beginning to go a different path. Where did you fit into all that?
Where did I fit into that? Well, I was very aware I was a co-ed, and women were not valued at Cornell exactly. Although we found lots of interesting men and lots of good frat parties to go to. Where do I fit in? I joined a sorority, just a wonderful sorority. I called them really genuine women. They weren't the glamour women, but we're still very close. I think that was the most important part of my college, was that friendship. We still have a group of 10, and we used to get together every year, and it's just very special relationships, and we do a lot of emailing. So I don't have a lot to say about Cornell.
Okay, so you went to Cornell, and you told me that you were a French literature major, and you were getting close to graduation, and you said, I don't know that I really have any skills to offer the world or to get a job in the world.
I couldn't even type well.
you did want to get a job, and this was in 1959 when you graduated, and you ended up going to the counselor's office and looking for job leads there. And tell us what you found.
Well, what I found was a little 3x5 card pinned up on a bulletin board there, and they said, do you like to travel? Do you like languages? We have a really exciting career for you in language and travel. And also, it pays $3,000 a year. I said, wow, that's good money, and you don't need any training. We'll teach you what you need to know. So I thought I fit that picture pretty well. And I signed on. It was a government agency, is all it said. So I had no idea, really, until I got to Washington and what I was into, and that it was CIA, which I really never had heard of. Central Intelligence Agency was not on every front page then, as it is. People love to out us and everything else. But it was, so then I was in Washington, and but I didn't have my security clearance. That took 3 months. So I'm sitting what they called the pool, which is right across the street from the Russian embassy. It was just an office building that they had where they kind of put us there until we were eligible to get, well, for me, until I had a security clearance. So that was July. In September, I had my clearance, and they said, well, we're sending you overseas. Where would you like to go? You guys, I don't know. I said, I want to go anywhere where I wouldn't normally go. So the machine went and said, how about Africa? I said, sure. It's like, almost where? So then they trained me for 6 months. I was trained in everything from station logistics and writing intelligence reports or putting together the information that was being collected, to being the sole communicator on a one-time pad, which I love doing, and look it up on Google. It's a very interesting thing where I don't think I was going to explain this, but it's no machines. It's a pad, and you learn what you call triads, and then you put them together on a clean pad, and then you put your text underneath it that you're writing, and then you decode it in a way to learn this code, and then you take it to the PTT, the post office, and mail it out. So that's what I was going to be doing in these little 1-2 people stations when I went out to Africa.
And did they give you like a shoe phone that you could talk into?
No.
Wasn't anything like that. What tell us about your first couple of assignments in Africa.
So I was supposed to go to Morocco, but for my French, but that fell through at the last minute. So I went to Cape Town, and it was a marvelous place. Lots of young people from all over the world, really. The Afrikaans were in Pretoria, but Cape Town was like the business part. It had support, and it had the Cape Malays, but it kept the blacks out. That they had to have like a pass every day to come in, and they could do the hard work. There were Cape Coloreds, and they could be the housekeepers, but it was incredibly segregated. Even in Cape Town, you felt that a little bit, but not so much. So I just had a great time. I lived in an apartment building over the beach in Clifton, and took the double-decker bus to work every day. Had a great time, met all kinds of young people from Australia and Norway and all over the place. And it was the land of bounty built on the backs of these Africans who were really barely acknowledged as being. And it was very distressing to me. I studied Afrikaans. That was as close as I got to an Afrikaner when I was in Cape Town. So I was always interested in trying to see the Africans, and it wasn't really very good on that.
You told me that you saw the reality of apartheid, and that was distasteful to you. You ended up leaving.
I
asking to
actually
leave.
transferred.
Yeah.
I wanted to go to real Africa. So they sent me to Pretoria for 3 months while they decided what to do with that. Nobody ever wanted to be transferred out of Cape Town. It was a life of beauty.
Yeah,
Flowers,
beautiful.
crayfish. Little boys would come to our door with penny sacks of crayfish to sell. But that was as close as I got to black. So then they sent me to Utsumvora, Rwanda-Urundi, a Belgian trust territory, which is just below the equator, to the right of the Congo, which was with breakaway Katanga at the time, and to the south of Uganda, and to the north of Tanzania, and at the top of Lake Tanganyika, which is the deepest lake in Africa. It was originally considered a tourist for exotic, unusual people who just wanted to go to what they call the Mountains of the Moon. And it's such a tiny place. It's, I have facts here somewhere,
No,
but it's like they'd be the size of New Jersey. I have a picture here of Africa and a little yellow dot in the middle.
Hold it up so they can see it.
I don't know if you can really see this,
Say
but it's
so.
a little yellow dot to the left
Right.
of the great big thing.
Right.
That's Rwanda and Urundi.
Okay.
Okay, and then you see that big lake. That's Lake Tanganyika. And it's kind of like at the end of the Nile, the White Nile, and they called it the Mountains of the Moon. But it was really a desperate, very impoverished place in Africa. And
Yeah, can
but
you,
the first day I got there, I wrote a letter home to my parents. I said, "This is real Africa." And the second letter said, "There's no segregation here." Well, neither of those were really exactly true. Real Africa, the Africans were there all the time in our lives. I saw them everywhere, but they were not happy because pretty soon after I got in there was an assassination of the king's son, the heir apparent, Prince Ragaswari. And they were in mourning that year. And as I said in my bio, they wanted to stay far, far away from white faces.
so so tell us, what was the actual work? Were you like, I mean, the concept we have right now, if you've been watching Homeland, is Carrie Matheson, that kind of a job, or what were you actually doing? And then how did that carry over to when you ended up coming back to the States?
It was a brand new consul general, not an embassy because it wasn't an independent state yet. And so there were three people in the State Department part of it, the Foreign Service, and there are two of us in the CIA station, me and my boss. And I was also then the clerk typist for the embassy. And what our job was, well, first of all, the kind of people who go into the covert side of CIA are all very unusual people. It was a man's world in those days, as it sort of was in Cornell, but it was breaking out. The co-eds were beginning to assert themselves. But it was a man's world, and we were all clerk typists. But one of the things that they said that they were doing an experiment. They were hiring liberal arts graduates to become clerk typists and eventually maybe reports writers. But they thought that they would add a lot to the environment in these small stations to have somebody who was kind of a jack of all trades and who's educated and could do more than clerk typing. And the officers were very resourceful. Every day was having to think outside of the box. And it was a very, like, everybody had a job to do and nobody really supervised you. You just knew what the job was and you did your greatest. There was great spirit in those days at CIA. And I was very in awe of these, they called them case officers. They were the people who went out and recruited the foreign nationals who were determined to have access to policy matters, basically.
So you worked there in Africa for several years, came back to the Washington area, went to work at Langley, which was brand new then, mid 1960s.
Yeah.
You were on the Vietnam desk.
Yeah.
Later, the Africa division. You said that they referred to you as Miss Biafra because you were covering a lot of
I
Nigeria.
got transferred back into the Africa division into a reports and requirements section.
Yeah.
Really my thing. I didn't know it in the time, but so they trained me how to be a reports officer on the job. I never got training except on the job. Reports officer basically is reports and requirements. So first of all, the process is you figure out what the policymaker needs, what the analyst and the policymaker needs. So you're in connection I had all these connections with the analysts and my agency and the analysts around town, and we figured out what the requirements were for any particular country, and then they would go and spot, the case officers would spot people who were in positions to know things and that the policymakers wanted. And then it was a matter of recruiting them, and then it was a matter of protecting them and their identity, but knowing what their access was and being able to write the intel report and the source description so that people could know kind of what the access was, how good it was, how reliable was their reporting. Part of my job was to vet them and their reporting and how reliable it seemed to be and how valued it seemed to be, and pass that back to the field offices. So that's what reports and requirements did. And it required us to know the area well. I wound up in North Africa, which became Middle East when the State Department brought them together. So then I'm in the Middle East. So then I'm on the reports desk, and Biafra is this breakaway state, and I'm put in charge of Biafra, which is really exciting. There was a lot of action going on there. And then later they transferred me to the Libya desk when Colonel Gaddafi was learning how to be a terrorist and terrorizing us all and thought. And then I got pregnant, and I got a year leave of absence. I took a leave of absence and came back. And then I got a raise while I was on my leave of absence.
Nice work.
I became the Deputy Chief of Reports and Requirements for the whole of Africa Division. And I was there for a while. They gave me a TDY to Tel Aviv, and it was fabulous. I worked with Mossad, and we don't collect against friendly countries, but we work against a terrorist target. And then they made me, my last job was, and it was a directed assignment, I became Chief of the Counterterrorism Center for Reports and Requirements. It was the first center where terrorism now in late 80s was becoming something that the policymakers were beginning to pay attention to, especially after the bombing in Beirut of the American embassy. Anyway, CIA formed this terrorism center, and people from all of the collection and analytical parts of the government did stints in this center where the center worked together. They weren't working they represented like the Defense Department, the FBI, even FAA, Federal Aviation Agency, wherever terrorism was an issue. And so we were all in that center together, and I was suddenly the chief of this. And it was an overwhelming job. It really was.
What was it like as a woman in the CIA environment?
It was great. I mean, at first we were clerk typists, but particularly in the Africa Division, which was a new division, they really kind of spotted you. And if you seem to have a talent or be doing well or being enthusiastic or being dedicated, you got moved up. And so I moved up very quickly there where I wouldn't have any other way. And I got up to a GS-15 by the end, every GS step. We never skipped a step. So I felt that they really were very open to people being an independent worker, knowing their job, doing it well, and being recognized. I think it was a great place to be. It was a very liberal place at the time.
And several people are asking, while you worked there, how much of what you did were you able to discuss?
None, zero or zip. So we kind of, it was difficult. I had light cover, I worked for the Defense Department. I knew nothing about the Defense Department. What I had was a secure phone number that if I needed to call somebody socially or something, I would use that number, which didn't say where I worked. But it was very light cover, and you couldn't really hold that cover because what did I know about working for the Department of Defense? Not a lot. So we kind of stuck together a lot.
So if somebody met you, and they said, "Oh, what do you do?" What would you tell them? I work for the DoD.
I would quickly change the subject and say, "Where are you from? Where do you work?" Became a great listener.
Okay, that's good. So you talked about, let's talk a little bit about your personal life as opposed to your professional life. which I guess is part of your personal life, but
It was.
while you were at CIA, you met an architect, got married, moved to Capitol Hill with him. He told me he rebuilt or redesigned the house you were living in Capitol Hill. And you ended up, and I'm just going to move through this just for time, but you ended up later getting divorced. But and then you said, I met a Jewish guy.
Okay.
And I took him to church on Capitol Hill, told him it wasn't a very religious church. He came to services and then he heard us saying, "This is the body, this is the blood." He got nauseous and left.
He did. I said, oh my God. This was a Reconstructionist St. Mark's Church right next door to where Vicki and Joel moved probably decades later. And so I said, okay, I thought, I loved St. Mark's and I thought there was no life after St. Mark's, but there was. So I said, okay, tell me about your religion. He was not religious, although he was from Pittsburgh and he had been confirmed in the Reform, but he couldn't care less. But I said, I want to know something about your religion. I still wasn't religious, but I really loved community. I think that was always a big issue for me in community. So also when I was at St. Mark's, we did a lot of study, very kind of open-minded study. We were seekers. And a Rabbi Melman from Temple Micah invited a group of us to come and study Jesus the Pharisee at a Southeast congregation. And I was fascinated by this. I was fascinated by our study, which was kind of out of the box, little Jewish seed there. My second husband and I went to a Reconstructionist Bethesda Jewish congregation, and I took one course there. It was with Eleanor Epstein, who now is Zemmer High, fabulous leader. She didn't sing to me, but I learned about Jewish tradition and Jewish rituals. And I thought that was fascinating. Christians don't have a lot of rituals. We have tons of rituals. They're tied to the land, they're tied to the seasons, they're tied to your spiritual development. And I just thought, wow, there's a lot going on here. I want to be part of this.
And this is about the time that you got pregnant and you had your son, and you said, I think before your son was born, that you wanted him to be born of a Jewish mother.
Right.
So you, at that point, decided that you wanted to convert and went to a friend of your husband's to go through that. Can you talk about that?
Crash course.
Yeah.
I really didn't learn enough, but I learned enough to know this is fabulous, and I'm in. I'm truly in. He sent me off to a mikveh, but he didn't come with me. It was a really hair-raising experience because they said, well, where's your rabbi? I said, huh? And they said, well, we'll take you in anyway, but they thought there was some kind of they weren't sure what they were dealing with there. But anyway, I love Judaism from the get-go. And I guess I should talk about Ruth, in the book of Ruth, who I just really identified with the book of Ruth, and I cry every time I think about her. We used to have, in choral group, a song of Ruth. Every time I would sing that song, I would cry. It's very hard to sing when you're crying, but Jewish music, choral music in particular, just moved me incredibly. And they're my kind of channel to the world, I think.
And you should say that the story of Ruth connects to you because
Ruth chose to follow her people, to choose her God. Their people's God would be her God, and that would be her life. And I thought it was a very brave decision, and I felt very much like that was what I was doing, and I felt that it was possibly the greatest choice I ever made in my whole life, and the best. So she's my spiritual sister.
So then you had your son, Ari, who I think is with us right now. Is Ari on?
Here.
Maybe, Ari, if you can just say hello so we can see your face. If you speak, you'll come up on the screen.
Hi.
Ah, there you are.
And Claude, if you can, yeah.
But
and Ari, you live in Chicago, I understand. You're getting married, I understand.
Not yet.
Okay. Oh, sorry. I thought I heard that. Anyway, you're living in Chicago, and just tell us in a sentence or two, what keeps you busy in Chicago?
Good question.
Well, up until a couple of months ago, I was full-time professional musician.
Yeah.
Yay.
So it's not keeping you busy right now.
Well, I mean, I've got plenty of things to do musically, but not a lot of outlets for that right now. So.
Okay. Well, thanks. Good to see your face. We'll get back to you. Let's go back to Linda real quickly.
I have to interrupt. I was the most choice.
All right, hold on. So later, so you went to Bethesda Jewish Congregation, Linda. You later ended up going to Temple Beth Ami, which you loved there. You said, I love Jewish learning and singing. That's a big theme in your life.
Singing. Phenomenal. She was.
And you met there Jeff and Eleanor Spieler, Gary Grossman, Adrian Kahn.
We were in a Havurah together.
You were in a Havurah together, okay.
I formed that Havurah.
Okay, and then you ended up, as they then migrated over to Adat Shalom through a series of different things, including a trip to Israel with Adat Shalom, you ended up at Adat Shalom. But in the meantime, you and your second husband split up, and then you ended up going to a gathering, I think you said at the Unitarian Church, just to meet people.
In Rockville, right near where, sorry, Senior Moments, Haya and Michael live at the
Okay, and you said, I met this, and I'm quoting, amazing guy with a British accent, a pink shirt, and a blue ascot. So tell us, how did that turn out?
That turned out fantastically, and he was just writing a note, so that was my best choice in life.
Okay.
They were all good. They were all seasons of wonderful things. The middle season was giving me Ari, my wonderful son. And what was the question? I've lost it.
Tell us about Claude.
His accent, and he found me they had a little breakout sessions where you had to say, what's your favorite, what animal would you like to be? And I was a squirrel. I was glad I wasn't in his class because I told him, he said, what? Anyway, he was really dashing, and we danced, and then it was a little dance and at like a DJ, and he had a little cup of wine. That's all I needed. We went outside and we talked the rest of the night, and we shared all these secrets. I think I even told him where I worked and told him you can't say it to anybody else. And he told me a few of his secrets, which I'm not telling.
Okay.
And we just bonded right there. He was my Bashert, my third Bashert.
And then
the first person I met at Adat Shalom was, what really convinced me to come to Adat Shalom was, I always signed up to go on a New Israel Fund trip. I had been on several New Israel Fund trips, wonderful trips. And this was during the second Intifada, and they said, get your own flights and we'll do the ground package. Usually they did the whole package. So I had a flight, and at the last minute they canceled the ground package. Well, I had met during my TDY in Israel years ago some wonderful people I kept in touch with, Israelis. So I had my ticket. I wanted to go, and I needed something to do for 2 weeks before my ticket home. So I called Gary Grossman. I said, help, I need a trip to Israel, and I need it quick. And he said, well, Rabbi Sid is leading a mission trip, and there's a lot of Adat Shalomers on. Come to our orientation meeting. It was perfect. I met Haya. She said, go. I went like 10 days before. She picked me up. We went to the airport, and I met all these Adat Shalomers. Got on the bus with them. Our first stop was at the windmill, and I got off not knowing anybody except Haya. And Tamar turned around and said, oh, hello there. Are you new? And we became fast friends all through the trip and all through her life. One of my close friends. So on that trip, they went to all of these like the New Israel Fund does, going to places where you really meet, like the impoverished people, the people doing justice work, all kinds of really neat people. And when we would get back on the bus from every place, they would send around a list saying, what could we do when we get back home to keep these connections going with these people? And I thought, wow, these are great people. I really want to be a part of this synagogue. So the very next week, I wrote a Dear John letter to my ex-rabbi at Temple Bethany, and I said, I need some more growth, and I'm moving on, and I thank you for being my first rabbi, and I just went wholeheartedly to Adat Shalom.
So you eventually, just kind of dialing or rewinding a little bit, you ended up spending, I think, about 30 years at CIA. Part of that was
plus 10.
Plus 10 as an outside contractor, right? And you ended up moving from, I think, GS4 to GS, what'd you say?
15.
15, which I don't understand that stuff as well as those of you who work for the government do. That's a big jump, right? A big leap.
Well, I didn't jump. I hopped and skipped every stone.
Right. So you retired at a certain point and said, okay, I'm done with working.
Yeah.
How have you filled that time? How have you kept yourself busy
So
since?
then I discovered something fantastic. I started to get mixed up in social things. And a friend she said, what do you want to do? I said, I want to work with kids. So she said, there's the Smith College Club who's working with Martin Luther King Elementary School in Anacostia, and they're tutoring these elementary school kids. So I went, and I love those kids. I love tutoring them. I love kids' books. I go to libraries and I read kids' books. I read lots of African stories to my son, which are great kids' books in a lot of ways, and they relate to nature and native people. Anyway, back to where am I? Help me here.
What you've done since retirement.
Oh, so that was just, I love that. I lived that for a decade at least. I had my one-on-one kid, and actually I think Elijah, who was one of my first, he was a second grader, and now I think he's 23 or 24, is just a sweetheart still. I fell in love with every one of those kids, and it was like 101, helping them discover words, word meanings, books. I got them a lot of Native American stories. I feel a real kinship to Native Americans and Black Africans, and in a way, this was payback to Africa and what I was able to see and learn in Africa, to be able to tutor these kids who many of them didn't have a book in the house, let alone furniture, and they were struggling. So that was a real bright time in my life, and I really cherish that.
And you also fill your time, you told me, we mentioned earlier that you like to sing and you've done a lot of singing. You also, I happen to know too that you've been active in meditation and silent retreats, that kind of thing. Also studying just Jewish studying.
I love studying Torah still. I'm in Ira Unger's biblical Hebrew, which is on the bottom of the heap there. But I absorb it all. I love it. I love Hebrew. Hebrew is a mystical language with the grammar and the roots. It's you learn a lot as you see the tenses intensify the meaning of each word, and one vowel can mean a lot, change the whole meaning. I love Hebrew. I think it's just an amazing language.
And Malka and Rena want to make sure that everybody remembers that you're active in the dancing group at Adat Shalom too.
Oh yeah. So I had so many seasons and so little time turning at Adat Shalom. My first, I joined there in March. In May they had their first retreat, and Amahai storytelling. They started the storytelling thing there. I joined the first storytelling troupe, and we had going for about 8 years. I'd never been on a stage, although I did do a lot of lecturing to the community about targeting and things like that when I was at the CIA, but I've never been on the stage acting, and I love storytelling. Had some wonderful, the troupe was wonderful. Then I became a village captain, and then I was, Taste of Shabbat I did for years. Got into prayer with movement. I love dance. Dancing with Diane DeFries is just unbelievable, and our small troupe of about 10 people are just an amazing group. I learned Hebrew. What else did I do at Adat Shalom? I was head of the, before I ever took a course at Adat Shalom, they needed a adult Jewish studies. Thank you, Ellen. Ellen renamed it Jewish studies. It's much better than adult ed. I was ahead of that. My co-chair was not really into it, but he was a really nice guy. So Fred and I basically, I think, chaired that committee for a year and a half. And that was kind of my also an entry.
Oh, and Musar, you're involved in that. Somebody else said composting. I don't know if there's a connection between Musar and composting.
Oh, yes, I'm very much into conservation.
What about Musar grabs you?
Oh, Musar is just an amazing study. We had a small group, just a marvelous group. I think we went for 8 or 10 years, and we had Ira Stone, who's a very renowned Musar teacher, and he really, the vibe, well, it's a discipline. It's a discipline that you learn, and people help you learn it, and you practice it on them, and it has a set of measures and values, like equanimity, honoring a person, order, simplicity, trust, faith, awe, gratitude. So we bearing the burden of the other.
Can I ask Claude, is there anything we haven't touched on that you think we really need to know about Linda? Nothing too secret, although she's shared some deep secrets with us. But I mean, what are some other things that you would sum up about Linda?
Oh boy. I have to listen.
I didn't know I was going to be. I think.
Linda, you'll need to mute.
What's most important is her love of Judaism.
I think if Linda could mute, then it would be good.
And every part of it, she's enraptured by. And she works so hard. She works so diligently on her Torah portion today. She worked so hard on learning Hebrew, even though it's clear it's difficult for her. She just throws herself into every part of Judaism, every part of Adat Shalom. And they're a separate statement. She throws herself totally into anything she does. She is so enthusiastic. She's so happy doing things. She loves him. I do love her also, yes. She's very enthusiastic about loving me. Maybe they'll do.
Thank you. So a couple of people have asked about the painting that's behind both of
I
you.
can't hear you.
So Linda, you're on mute now. You can unmute.
I'm on.
There you go. Push the space bar. There you go. There's a painting behind you. A couple of people have asked,
Okay.
what is it? Where's it from? Okay.
I adore the ocean. I adore the ocean. I love swimming. I love going out beyond the breakers and just lying on my back and looking up at the horizon and the clouds. I love sailing, and I started swimming in the ocean when I was 4 years old in Ocean City, New Jersey. So my friend Joy from Ari's childhood, mother of Ari's best friend, they would come to the beach with me, and I wanted to buy an oil painting of the ocean. And we went all over it was Ocean City, New Jersey, looking for this oil painting. And I finally found this, and I just wanted to put it behind me to hide Claude's desk and to just remind me of the place I love to be, which is by the ocean. So sailing was really important to me. My father bought us a sailboat when I was in my teens and said, here, learn how to sail. We joined the yacht club, so we should race every weekend. That's what they did. And we named the boat the Also Ran, which in racing means, well, that's the guy who picks up the end but never quits. So Dad said, you're not quitting. We stayed in every race. The race committee would have to sit on the dock until we finally came in, but we came in every race the first year. My dear brother Stephen was my crew. He suffered mightily because I was like a very active skipper, and I wanted him to jump on everything right away. The wind changes all the time, and he couldn't move fast enough for me. The second year, we really prevailed. We won the regatta for the new sailors, and at the end of the year, they keep track all year long. And sailing has just been my passion. And Ruth Poulin is my skipper. And I just love Ruth Poulin and the way she organizes her women's sailing weeks. We go out and we sleep on her boat, and she's just a master sailor, and she insists that we all take our part in sailing at the helm and with the sail. So it's part of my DNA, the ocean, the sails. What else?
South Africa.
Can I?
The windsurfing.
Okay. Well,
I pictured it. I can't.
before we get too far down the road, we're getting close to time, and I just want to say, Ari, is there a word or two that you? I don't want to put you on the spot, but a word or two that you'd like to say, that something you think we all need to know about your mom that
Okay.
hasn't come up yet?
No. I'm struggling again. My mother and I were not close. We didn't have anything in common, and she was raising this very difficult.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. I'm asking Ari if he can say a word or two.
Oh, Ari.
Sorry about that.
No, I was just gonna say that when my mom retired early, partially, even though she loved her job, I think it's been made clear, and her career, I should say, it wasn't just a job. But I know it was to spend time with me, like towards the end of my high school. She retired early, and I think sacrificed some, pension benefits to do that, which I really appreciate. But and then I don't know, I feel like she's really come alive during her retirement, because a lot of people, when they retire, they slow down, but my mom has kind of done the opposite. And I think just the list of all the things that she's been involved in, and the ones that she forgot to mention are showing up in this chat here, which is cool to see, because there's so many activities. Like, she's just been so incredibly busy and engaged with, this community for one, and then all these other communities that she's found and activities, and just led such a rich life outside of her career. In addition, I should say, that it's just been inspiring to see in my adulthood, watching her kind of blossom in her second, I guess her renaissance, you could say.
Good. Thank you for adding that.
Yeah, and then just her spirit of adventurousness throughout her life, especially later in life, it's been really inspiring. So
I want to say, I adore my son, and my daughter-in-law to be is just a fantastic woman, and her parents I think I saw them a lot today, and I just have a lot of admiration for Carol and what she's doing in her job. And I just want to say I love being gig mom. I go to Chicago and I go to Ari's gigs, and I stay to the bitter end, and I love the people, the blues. These people who love blues are really they're people of the earth. When they get up and dance, I'll dance with anybody there. And Ari sometimes says, I don't think you should be dancing with that person. But one time, and I always felt kind of weird about being there. Like, am I still hovering over my son? Does he feel like I'm still trying to be mom? So I'd sit in the back and I'd sip my Merlot. I can keep a Merlot going, one or two, for like 6 hours. So one day, some of the guys in the band came and sat with me with Ari, and one of them, I was feeling really weird about it, Ari's mom being here, this is kind of weird. And one guy said, I really love that you come to your son's gigs. My mom has never come to any of my gigs. I wish my mom would come to a gig. I said, oh,
I
okay.
have to say, just to cut in, that every time she's gone to a performance, regardless of what type of venue or kind of audience, that like she has always been a hit. Making new friends everywhere, finding dance partners, just.
And if he's playing in the DC area, she is guaranteed to fill the house.
Oh,
She
okay.
Yeah.
Let us know the next time you're here, Ari. And
Oh, I do. I send it out to the National Listserv and to my
okay.
listserv, and I get 30 or 40 people at the Hamilton Club downtown. We'll fill a whole section.
Okay. You should get commission, actually.
Well, right now he's an independent operator, and he's happy
Right.
about that.
Well, I'm going to bring this to a close very reluctantly, because there's clearly so much more we can talk about. But that's for another time. For again, when eventually we'll be sitting across the table from you, or rubbing shoulders with you in choir practice or wherever it may be. Let's take some time to kind of dig more deeply then into all of these things, which we could have spent way much more time. I neglected to say at the very beginning that I think it's your birthday tomorrow.
Yeah.
Okay. So you're not quite 83 yet. So
No.
you're still a young person. Not that 83 is old, by the way, but thank you very much, Linda. Thanks to all of you. Claude, also for your contributions. Ari, everybody.